Amir Makupson takes a closer look tonight.
Do you think that the overcrowding could have played a part in the sexual assault that happened of a young man?
I'll tell you that is still under investigation, and I can't speak about it, given the pending police investigation. But there's no doubt that whenever you have overcrowded, understaffed situations, it is less safe. And we recognize that the overcrowding and the understaffing were creating a circumstance where our kids could get hurt, and we had a responsibility to act. The CEO realized there was just a responsibility for us to step up, called for a public health state of emergency, and we've been operating in that state of emergency now for several weeks.
In particular, in some of the families that I talked to, it got rough for a lot of people, a lot of families.
Over the course of the pandemic, we saw a couple of things happen. Number one, there was a mass shutdown of a lot of these facilities. And so the number of long-term residential stay facilities declined across the state. Now, in order to appreciate what that means, I just want to explain how the juvenile justice system works. Kids who are caught up in the system will start in a juvenile detention facility that's usually operated either by a court or a county. They're intended to stay there until they get sentenced. Now, for juveniles, we don't call it sentenced because they don't get sentenced as time. Instead, they get adjudicated and they're sent for treatment. And when you shut down those long-term residential treatment facilities, what happens is those kids don't have a place to go after they're adjudicated. So the proportion of juveniles in our juvenile detention facility, whereas in the past had been all pre-adjudicated youths, became both pre and post-adjudicated youths. Our average length of stay went from 21 days to 127 days. The number of kids in our facility went from an average of about 65 to upwards of 160 at one point. And so that created and exacerbated a staffing challenge because the work got so much harder, people got overwhelmed and they left the job. This was all, by the way, in the midst of a great recession that had happened across the economy. You're talking about people who are doing some of the hardest work in the economy. They're going to be the first to just say, you know what, I'm done, right? Mm-hmm. And in COVID, right, we know that it interrupted a lot of workplaces, and there was the same for ours. Mm-hmm. That was really driven by the fact that we just didn't have long-term residential stays. So that created overcrowding, understaffing, and led to a situation where the CEO realized that there was just a responsibility for us to step up, called for a public health state of emergency. And we've been operating in that state of emergency now for several weeks. I'm glad to say that we've been working with our partners at the state, working with the courts to reduce the number of juveniles in our facility. We went from 144 to 108 yesterday, so that's really good news.
What did the state do to help with that?
So they've been working with us just to really focus on case by case who can move out of our facility, but also can we open up some more long-term residential stay beds? So they've been really focused on trying to work with providers that still operate here in the state to open up more beds. There is, for example, 40 beds that are supposed to come online in the next month. When you talk about low-income black or brown kids, the thing that you usually do get is sympathy. And I've never worked with a population of kids who didn't have at least that sympathy. And this is the first time I've had that experience. And it's a really sad thing because when you talk to these kids, most of them will acknowledge that they've done something that is horrible. But they're still kids. And they still deserve our belief in the future that they can have. And the hard part is that when we don't see that future, we're foreclosing on it. And that's a choice we make about the lives that these kids can have in front of them. And so, this is frankly, I hope, a 4-alarm moment for this whole state, here in Wayne County, at the state, but all of us in our communities, to ask, what does it take for us to find the empathy to see the children for children? Because that's who they are. You'll go and you'll talk to them, and it's striking that this is just a kid, and they deserve us to be invested in their future, not just to hold them accountable for their past.
If things don't change, and they don't change fast, what do you see happening with our kids in juvie?
Well, I'll tell you this: they are going to change fast, and they are changing fast, and we are going to fix this challenge. What I will say is that moving forward, we've got to ask big picture questions about the system. Are we invested in it in the way that it deserves? Because I do think it's an important thing that when we talk about kids, we don't talk about sentencing to time. We're not punishing them for what they've done. We're rehabilitating them for what we failed to do, right? And that takes investment. And if we don't make that investment, I worry that we're going to continue to have kids who fall victim to a system that punishes rather than invests, uplifts, and rehabilitates. So I do hope that folks out there who are concerned about the situation are asking big picture questions of what are we going to do about it? What are we together going to do to lift these kids up, get them the services that they deserve, and invest in the future that they can have? And I can tell you, the CEO is committed to our doing that here in Wayne County, and we're executing on that vision every single day. But it's a team effort, and we're really grateful for the partnership we've had with the state. We're grateful for the partnership we've had in the courts. But this is an issue that all of us really have to tuck into, and it's not one that most of us think about every day, right? And part of the challenge here is that sometimes what we do is we sort of hide these kids away and we say we don't have to think about that. But these are our kids, and I'll tell you, when you look them in the eye, they're like, this could very well be my kid. And I hope that everybody thinks of them that way.
Well, coming up, Amir will have more on that public health state of emergency in Wayne County Juvenile Detention Facility. Again, to be clear, this is for the facility, not the city. Coming up on CBS News Detroit at 7, more from her conversation. Welcome back. Our Amir Makeupson has more from her interview with the Wayne County Director of Health, Human and Veteran Services about how they are addressing these issues at the Juvenile Center. Take a look.
One of the things that we've been working on is working with a partner, Team Wellness, to bring forward an intensive day program that includes everything from therapy for youths to a robust education component where they can be learning their basics, but also being trained for potential trades that they might be interested in pursuing, to offering recreation. I mean, these are still kids, and we have a responsibility to make sure that they're engaged as kids and they get that opportunity to engage with each other and have some fun. So this kind of program offers an opportunity for a kid to go home on a tether, but at the same time get the kind of services they might get in a residential program.
And when would that start?
So we're hoping to bring it operational as soon as possible. And I know the folks at Team Wellness, they're great people doing amazing work, and I hope folks will go out there and learn more about what they do. But they've been working literally night and day to put this together and to make it a welcoming environment for our young people. They think about every aspect of a child's life. It's their education, certainly, but most importantly, their mental health. And they spend a lot of time in therapy working through a lot of the experiences that led them to this point and helping empower them with skills to manage things like anger or anxiety or depression. And then there's recreation time, right? These are still kids. And I'll tell you, Amir, it is mind-blowing to both look at someone and say, you're a kid, like really a kid, and they're children, but also a kid who did something that unfortunately has really changed the course of your life. Mm-hmm. And so, I think our job is to play for the life that kid can have and mm-hmm. to work to empower them to have that. And a lot of what we've tried to do in our facility has been focused specifically on safety and security, but also recognizing that if juveniles are going to be spending months in our facility, we have a responsibility to jumpstart that kind of treatment and education. And so a lot of what we focused on is not just upgrading our facilities, hiring new staff. We raised wages 35% to be able to really make this the kind of enticing job that befits the challenge of the job. But also to bring online more space so that kids aren't concentrated and then being forced to sort of stay in a room most of the day. But also to bring online in-facility services. So working with that same provider to scope out the opportunity to start providing therapy and at least an assessment so that kid's gotten jump-started on their path toward rehabilitation over the long term, even as we work with the state to build out more long-term residential stay facilities. And then the last piece is thinking a little bit about why does, if you were a 16-year-old kid and you're in a situation where every day you call your lawyer and you say, is there a place for me? And they say no. Like, you can imagine you go pretty stark crazy in that facility. And so even things like giving folks a locked down version of a tablet, right? Like kind of iPad that you might get for your teenage son, but one that is limited in terms of its capacities. But at least you got educational programming, you got some music, you got some movies, but something that you could spend your time augmenting your educational experience with, that will occupy your mind. And so I think for us, it's asking, we didn't.
How can the community support? We don't work in the system. How can the community support?
Well, I think we should be advocating for a much bolder, broader mental health infrastructure across our communities. But let's be clear, right? This is one continuum. Our failure to invest in mental health outside is what leads, I think, so many of these kids to find themselves on the inside. And I also think it's just advocacy for investment in this problem. I think, when you think about where government can put its dollars, there are a lot of different things it could be working for. But supporting the most vulnerable people who've lost everything, including sympathy from everyone else, they have to be top of our list. And I think the way we treat our most vulnerable is a testament to who we are as a society. In this county, we've said that we are going to invest everything we can in our most vulnerable kids. But advocacy to make sure that across our society we're doing the same thing, that's critical. And everybody has a voice. And the question is, where do we raise it? And on what issues do we raise it? And I hope that this is one of them.